Tonight on The Story, we begin on the reservation of the Confederated Tribes of Siletz Indians. For decades, there have been strict limitations on their hunting, fishing, and gathering rights under an agreement between the tribe, the state, and the federal government dating back to 1980.
We felt like we had very little power.
Well, it was horrible because, I grew up with my dad who he didn't have any limit.
The final move to officially repeal that agreement happened late last week, more fully recognizing the tribe's right to access their traditional foods. It's our big story tonight. In western Oregon, the Siletz River flows through the heart of the Confederated Tribes of Siletz Indians.
And the name itself is in Tillamook language, and it refers to something that's kind of like coiled up like a rope.
The winding waterway defines the reservation.
The town of Siletz is almost an island because of this big loop that the river takes. Just lots of resources, crawfish.
But for the last 4 decades, accessing those resources hasn't always been easy for the tribe. Just take it from Kevin Goodell.
Well, it's been horrible. We, our people, that's what we grew up eating was our indigenous foods.
So we've had a lot of struggles.
The Siletz Reservation first formed in the 1850s.
We're the most diverse confederation of tribes on a single reservation.
By the 1950s, they lost their land under the Congressional Western Oregon Termination Act, part of a U.S. Indian termination policy.
It meant the last bit of our reservation land was sold by the Bureau of Indian Affairs, and a small check was received by each tribal member.
The tribe reorganized in the late 1970s. Then, in 1980, in exchange for restoring the Siletz Reservation, the tribe was forced to sign an agreement with the state of Oregon and the federal government, limiting their hunting and fishing rights.
Even though there was lots of pressure, lots of Oregon newspapers had headlines of, if Siletz Tribe is restored, there will be nets across all the rivers and the fish will disappear. Well, that didn't happen.
The restrictions included limited fishing spots and only several hundred deer and salmon tags, and just 25 elk tags handed out, lottery style, to about 6,000 tribal members.
It was a very competitive system, not very fair.
Well, it was horrible because, I grew up with my dad who he didn't have any limit, and he would hunt and fish, kind of do what he wanted for himself and the community as hunting and fishing.
The decades-long restrictions forced the tribe to go elsewhere for food.
We have fallen more and more into the Safeway and McDonald's culture of that's where you get your food, and that's unfortunate. It goes against our traditional beliefs.
It means everything. We, I think it's in our DNA, and what we're eating today that you buy in the stores is, I have no clue what it's doing to us.
2 years ago, the tribe and the Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife entered a new voluntary agreement, giving the tribe the power to manage their own hunting and fishing rules. But that 1980 agreement was still technically on the books.
It felt like it was still hanging out there.
Until late last week, when the state finally repealed it, a move Davia Palmieri at the Department of Fish and Wildlife calls long overdue.
It's been 45 years that the consent decree was restricting the rights of Siletz tribal members to participate in hunting, fishing, trapping, and gathering.
The state's repeal was the final step to officially remove those decades-old restrictions. The federal government had already done their part to leave the agreement in the past.
So it is important to the department and to the state that we can work together with tribal governments to give their members access to those culturally significant resources.
Resources painted on the walls of Siletz Tribal Council.
All the regalia that you see on the people are made from our natural resources around us, and that's part of showing respect for those things and thankfulness.
It's awesome for our people, yeah. It's a big step for us.
Now, the feeling among the tribal members I talked with was relief. even though for the past 2 years they've been operating under that new agreement with the state, which allows them more freedom when it comes to their hunting and fishing rights. But now that 1980 agreement is gone, they no longer have to worry about those restrictions hanging over their head. Now, this morning, Governor Tina Kotek's office sent me this statement. I want to read part of it here for you. She says, "No tribe should have to choose between their land or their sovereign rights. I applaud the Fish and Wildlife Commission for repealing the 1980 decree that forced the Siletz to lose their rights in exchange for getting their status and land restored."